and welcome to episode 510 of the God is a Geek podcast. My name's Adam Cook, and I'm joined this week by Chris White. Hello, Chris. How are you, mate? All right?
Hey, hello. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
You're all right? You sure you're all right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just looking for Chris Hyde.
No, he's not here. He's not here. No. But we've also got Mick Fraser. Hello, Mick. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Yep, good, mate. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good.
And also, from a very special location is Lyle Carr. Hello, Lyle.
Hi, I'm in a very special location, lying on my bed.
Yep. Okay. No, that's fine.
That or a really small bathroom. I couldn't tell.
Can easily be a small bathroom.
No.
So this week, we've got no Chris Hyde. Heidi's not here. He's from what I understand on a
It's
lads,
great, isn't it? It's
a
gonna
lads
be great.
weekend.
No one telling us off.
No, I think he's probably drunk by now. Like he's having all the bants but that means no listener correspondence this week because it wouldn't be right to play the jingle with not him here. We tried it before and it just felt wrong to us. But that's okay. And the reason that's okay is because we have so many games to talk about. So let's get into it. Mick, you have played through and reviewed Forspoken. So, I mean, what better place to start than Forspoken?
Okay.
Let's
start there then, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
Any good?
Yeah, I liked it. A lot of people didn't. It's good. I think it's weird. It's been one of those games that people seem to want to hate before it was even out. It's been really strange watching it. I think I said it to you, Adam, earlier, that even other games have been like Dead Space is coming, and you barely hear anything about Dead Space, which is like a massive remake, because everyone's just slagging Forspoken off. Like, no one cares about anything else, and it's weird because most of the hate seems to come from this idea that the writing is particularly bad, or
I don't. How early do we want to argue on this?
Well, I don't know.
Because Chris White mentioned something, right? Just before we started the podcast, we were chatting about this game, and Chris White mentioned about how far he is into the game, and it got me thinking about the intro in New York and how she ends up homeless, essentially. And it didn't. I sort of forgot because so much happens after that. So the premise of the game. It's not really a spoiler. I mean, it's literally the opening hour, I suppose. But the premise of the game is that she's it looks like she's living in a place she's not supposed to be, but she's got a big bag of money that she's going to escape with. And Chris, you said it. If the amount of money it looked like she had, you'd risk jumping through that fire. And,
absolutely.
But also the question I had is why did she just... So she just escapes from a gang who are threatening to kill her, essentially. And then rather than just take that money and just go... She goes, I'll sleep on it. I think I'd have just gone. I think I'd have just gone and got out of Dodge, wouldn't you?
Yeah. The other thing as well is that she kind of does that thing where she goes, I tried to pick the money up straight away in the bit when you were in the bedroom. Yeah. And she goes, I've got to check on the cat first. Well, you can do that with a bag full of money in your hand. Yeah. It's like thousands of dollars there.
It's not so much that the writing's bad. I think that some of the initial premise is strange and not great and not really well... It doesn't really need to be there, a lot of it, I don't think.
Look, I think it gets off to a bad start. And
I think that's very true.
You talked about it while we were playing it. It gets off to a bad start. It takes far too long to get anywhere. I think the bit in New York is pointless. That could have been a flashback cutscene or something, or it didn't even need to be there. It could have started with her. I mean, she didn't even, and this is going to sound like, I don't know what this is going to sound like, but she didn't even need to be homeless, like for the story to be.
No, not at all.
It was kind of, and because all it did was make her spend the entire game telling everybody that would listen that she was from New York and people from New York are tough, and it was like over and over and over with the same thing. And it all stemmed from that beginning where like, I mean, you get all that stuff with the gang, and I don't know, think. Maybe we can't spoil yet, but
we shouldn't. It's literally just out, really. So
yeah, I don't want to spoil whether that comes to anything or not. But it's like I think the biggest problem I had with the writing wasn't necessarily the plotting. Like, I didn't mind the story. I didn't mind the plot. I quite like the idea of, this girl goes to this magical land. She's got to save it because she's the only one who can. There was backstory of why it was her, why she was the chosen one and stuff. That was good. All that was fine. I can get with that. It's standard fantasy fare, really. Like, it didn't do anything special, really.
It's not so much the writing or the story that ever bothered me. It was kind of the way some of the characters are and the dialogue. Like, there's an option in it where you can turn down the sort of chat between Cuff, which is the magic thing that gives her the magic on her wrist, and Frey. And I did very quickly. And it's not so much because I thought it was bad, but because I just thought for a game of this size, they just haven't recorded enough sort of dialogue options. Like, there just weren't enough lines of dialogue between Cuff and Frey. It was repeating straight away.
It's like the stuff that people pinpointed, particularly on Twitter, where they were showing like clips of Frey and some of the dialogue in the game. A lot of that was taken out of context. Like, I'm not saying that context made it particularly any better, but it was taken out of context. And she was a character, or she is a character. It's not like the thing I found was that she was quite inconsistent. Like there's a clip on Twitter that probably everybody's seen by now where I move shit with my mind, that thing that's going to become a meme, I'm sure, if it hasn't already, where you fight the first bunch of enemies and she gets excited about it.
Seen that, and I thought the clip that everyone was talking about was going to be the one where she says about leveling up.
Yeah, no one's really cottoned on that, but
they've not got far enough in yet. Yeah, maybe.
No, but everybody's picking on this. I just move shit with mine, and like, on the one hand, like, I thought she was supposed to be 16. She's supposed to be 20. I don't know
21,
where
I think.
Yeah. So which kind of changed it a bit because she does act like a child, but like she's energetic and she's excited. And she does this whole, I just move shit with my mind thing, and it is a bit cheesy, and it is. I know the bit
you mean. That's not that bad.
It didn't register with me when I played it.
Not at all. Now I'm just thinking back to it, going, "Oh, that's the bit people have been."
Yeah, but I find that the biggest problem with it is that it's so inconsistent. Like, her character, like I said to you, I think when I was reviewing it, 1 minute she's pissed off at everything. This world sucks. She just wants to go home. Why she wants to go home so much? To her, nothing. She has nothing. When she goes to Athia, she literally owns nothing but a mobile phone. That's it. She's even giving the cat away at this point. She has nothing, but she wants to go home desperately, back to this life of misery in New York. But anyway, 1 minute she hates everything. And she literally say, "Oh, this place sucks," or she'll get attacked again. And in the very next soundbite, she's woohooing and whooping and cheering that she's doing all this magic shit. And it's like, just make up your mind. Is she happy to be here? Is she not happy to be here? Is she happy she's got powers? Is she pissed off she's got powers?
I will say, like, narrative, story, all that aside, once the game takes off the training wheels, which, by the way, it does far too late. Like, it needs to do it
5 hours, I think, by my count.
I think I would have gone closer to 7, because that's when you get like the second spell set and you start to.
Yeah, because it lets you out and then you have to come back to that fucking god awful hub city.
That is an awful hub city. There's no way around it. Like, that is a really bad. It's to me, when you're not playing the open world and adventuring and combat, when you're not doing that, it feels like you're playing a game that's been designed by someone who has never played a game before. Or thinks you've never played a game before, if you know what I mean.
It's little bits. It's things like when you have to have those conversations with Cuff, which just have the conversation while I'm running. You spend so much of this game running from place to place, and the movement, and especially when you start to unlock some of the cool stuff later. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but you unlock some really cool traversal stuff. You spend so much of this game running. I finished the game in like 23 hours, and then I've spent another 9 hours since that just running around the landscape looking for stuff. Like, you spend so much of this game in motion. Have the conversations then. Like, I'm literally running across a field for 15 minutes. I don't mind. Now have a conversation with Cuff. Now strike up something and you can chat about it, because otherwise it makes you stand still and choose options from a list. And then you have the whole dialogue, and then you pick the next one and she has that whole dialogue. And then at the end you click, that's enough. And then it lets you carry on again. It's just baffling design, because once you're out into the game, and once you are in the world and you're moving around, and people have complained about the combat. The combat is incredibly messy, but it's also incredibly cathartic, I think. It's also a lot of fun.
It's quite visually really, arresting as well. Like when with the fire, when you're like really blasting stuff. Yeah, no, the combat I haven't got an issue with. It can be a lot to wrap your head around, but it's
especially like the back quarter of the game. You've got so many spells. There are so many spells in this game. Like the skills and abilities, there's a mountain of them, and you keep unlocking them. Even after you finish the campaign, you keep going and going, and you carry on finding more and more of these spells and abilities and skills. And then, of course, you can upgrade them, and you can add different effects to them. And by the end of it, it does become, you have got all this stuff, and it is a bit overwhelming. But once you've been in it for 15 to 20 hours and you've mastered it, it's so much fun. Like the combat, and it is at the beginning, it's very strange because for the first quite large chunk of the game, it was too easy for me. I remember I said to you, it's too easy. This is I might even up the difficulty, which I never do, because it was just too simple. I was winning every fight, and then all of a sudden it goes, no, it's just leveled me all the time. And that was the point where the game, I think, had decided that I now had enough stuff unlocked and I'd upgraded enough stuff that I should be able to handle myself in tougher situations. It was just such a jarring step and such a big difficulty spike. But after that point, once I'd acclimatized to that and I realized that I did have all these things that I probably hadn't been using because I've been just spamming the easy stuff, it became a much more fun game again. I don't know why it's been knocked so much. I think it's been really, really unfair. I've played worse games that have done better. I've seen worse games. I've seen much, much worse writing and dialogue in games. I mean, I've played JRPGs. I've played the Resi games. I mean, and people are going, oh, but it's different in Resi because it's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. And you think, well, is it supposed to be, though? I don't think it was originally supposed to be.
Not originally, perhaps. No, not perhaps like when the first one originally. I don't know. Like, I will say, I must admit, I'm with you in that I think the writing was on the wall for this game before. I don't like it as much as you. Like, I'm not going to beat around the bush.
No, that's fair, yeah.
I don't think it's awful. I think there are parts of it that are truly dreadful. Like, I think the fact, like, we're playing a brand new IP in a brand new year, 2023, and you have to stand still and have a discussion with Cuff, which is a jewellery piece on your arm, rather than just walk around and by the way, which only you can hear because it's like a magical link thing. The fact you have to stand still, and if you want that lore, you have to stand there and be like, press that button. Okay, now talk at me while I can't do anything but stand it. Like, that's archaic to me. The Callisto Protocol did that with its audio logs, and I thought it was dreadful. And this does it as well. And I will say that do you know the game it reminds me a bit of, in terms of the discourse, if you will, is, do you remember when Final Fantasy 13 came out and everyone talked about how long it took to get good?
Yeah.
Now, this is what I'm feeling about Forspoken. It takes far too long to get good. Once you get there, see, for me, it kind of done me in. I was like exhausted by it. Like every time it takes you back to that city and because it removes control from you too much in those early stages. And I don't mean there's a cutscene. I mean, it will just have you stood still while someone talks at you, and I put the controller down, and eventually I went back to the hub, and then it did it again. And one time I remember just putting the controller down, I turned it off. And I did come back to it, and I did go and do some open worlding, and I enjoyed the open world stuff. I liked the combat. I liked the traversal. Once you start unlocking skills to enhance your movement overall, it really is good to move around in that game. It really feels good. I just think it takes so long to get there. And I think the demo hindered it. The demo was not a good demo. I don't think
the demo did it no favours whatsoever.
And it has. I would argue it has a bad start. Like the game starts and it is like it's not interesting. The characters aren't doing it for me. The story's not doing it for me. You want me to care about this girl, and perhaps I will by the end of it. But right now she's not. I've no reason to. It's just you've not given me any kind of reason to care about anyone in this game right now. And something you put in your review really hammered that home to me, where you said the game is consistent in one respect, that it kind of tells you to feel stuff all the time, without ever actually
it keeps reminding you. It does that thing where every time you enter a new place, Frey tells you that it's awesome. Like, you don't see it yourself and go, wow, she beats you to it every time. And like, if the game wants you to be sad, it tells you you're sad now. This bad things happen, and you don't feel any connection to any of these characters. They don't bring any. There's no character. The only character I liked in the game was Cuff, because I like the dry British humour that he has occasionally. I think he was quite subtly written. in a lot of respects. I don't think he played very well as a straight man to Frey because she wasn't enough. Like, I don't want to take away from performances and stuff. The girl who plays Frey, or the woman who plays Frey, does a fine job. Like with what she's given,
she's done the job she's been asked to do. Absolutely,
yeah,
perfectly.
absolutely. But I do think that they didn't know. See, I'm wondering, and I keep wondering this, if the whole she's homeless from New York was kind of added later, because it doesn't really.
It's trying to make you empathetic towards her, and it's unnecessary. Like I think there's a lot of this game that maybe. Listen, you liked it more than me, but you didn't like. You're not raving about it, but I do wonder if this game is aimed at a certain demographic, and that demographic is about 15 years my junior, because
probably
a lot of this is like it feels. It feels kind of very online in ways to me, the way it's written, and that's not me saying I think it's bad. Again, I just think some of it feels like it was written for a generation that grew up with online being the thing rather than a thing, and that's a very fine line definition wise. But some of it's like it's edgy, but it's not really edgy. Like
no,
and I remember like seeing it early doors, 2000. I think it was 2021, and like really late in 2021. And I remember seeing a presentation for it, and even then, it felt odd to be in this medieval world and this character just constantly throwing f-bombs at everything.
She swears so much. It
and so do I.
Borders on parody.
But so do I. Do you know what I mean? And so do you, and we all do. But it I don't know. It was weird. It doesn't. There's a dichotomy there that just. It didn't work for me, and it still doesn't. Yeah. But see, again, it's not a bad game, and I do think it's been done a bit dirty by like the preconceptions.
It has, definitely.
It's going to happen with Hogwarts next month, I suspect, as well, but for different reasons entirely.
It didn't do itself any favours, though. There were things that they could have done, I think, that could have, and I'm not going to go into them, but there's things they could have done that I think could have improved the experience. I mean, it's like we said, if they'd have let you just get on with it, if they'd have just gone straight into the world, maybe had a cutscene and a little bit at the beginning, then you're in that world. If you're in that world in hour 1, let's say, which you're not, it's like hour 5 by the time you're actually free. If you're in that world with that traversal and you were jumping into that combat within the first hour, and I think the hub city felt like something they added afterwards. Like they went, we need something in here to pack it. They really didn't. They didn't need that. They needed a place where you could go and I don't even think it needed the vendors, but they could have just put some vendors in there and left all the other stuff, all those detours where you go off and you're feeding fucking sheep or you're doing a tour of the city. Of what? What are you showing me? Takes you to a wall and goes, this is where this person lives. I don't know who that person is. I don't know what this bit of the city looks the same as the last bit of the city. All that stuff just goes on far too long. And you get, like I said, probably a compacted 4 or 5 hours of that. and then this is the weird thing. Once you get past this, probably the second time it really forces you to go back to the city and do cutscene stuff. You don't go back there for the rest of the game. You're just free, and you just go off and do it. Even when you're carrying on and you're facing bosses, and you're upgrading, and you're unlocking new stuff, and you're finding out new story beats, you never have to go back to the city again. It's like we're done with that now. So why do you have to in the first place? It's just infuriating.
You know, like the game that, and not mechanically, not gameplay wise, but the game that kept coming to mind through my entire time with it was Assassin's Creed. Right, in that I felt like. People look back now on Assassin's Creed and say it was rubbish, and then 2 is where it got good, and yet really you've got to be fair to that and say that the first game sort of laid the foundations for the sequel, which was fantastic. And I sort of feel like there's a bit of that here. Like, a sequel to Forspoken, learning the lessons. Do you know what I mean? Like, stop removing controls, stop making me stand still. Get me into the game. Get me enjoying the thing that you spend the most time doing, which is the movement, the combat. Get me doing that sooner. Like the way you unlock skills in this. Some of them you find. Some of them you just go into a menu and hit unlock because you found enough things you've run over in the world. And that doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel like the way a skill tree should work. It feels like they should all be earned. These are powerful spells. And you can get into a situation where you go to the menu, unlock 6 spells, and you're like, well, none of these mean anything to me because they're just 6 new spells now, and I'm just going to blast through them one by one. Yes.
You also get given spells at random times as
and
well.
Powers.
And then, like I had, when I was doing guides, I'd go into my menu and go, have I been using that spell? I've got a spell there that I couldn't remember how I got it. And it was one that I'd been using. So the game must have either told me or I must have stumbled on it. I don't know how I got it. And some of those spells that you go to the ends of the world to find, those spell fountains, which I think they're not great. And you think, well, why have I gone all this way when I've just unlocked a far better spell? Like there's 4 spells in the game, which are each element of the magic has a specific spell where you can press a button, do an attack and combo into it.
Yes.
The game just lets you unlock those, whereas those should be the games that you have. Those
should be important.
That you've got to earn because they're game-changing abilities.
Yeah, and I think because of what you've just said, that's why I kept forgetting that I could press L1, R1, and square, and that would, whatever magic spell I was doing, combo me into my fire. But because it was something I just unlocked. But look, it's a difficult game to discuss because it has so much good and so much bad. Mick gave it 7.5 out of 10. You can read that review. The load times are amazing. We've got a little YouTube short. If you're listening to this later, go to youtube.com/ScotishGeek and you can see that. We must move on, I suppose, because otherwise we're just going to talk about Forspoken forever.
I will say before we go that I do hope that somehow, and I probably won't, but I do hope that somehow it does enough that they get to come back to the world, because I think
it's a PS5 exclusive, so you kind of it's got a bed of users that you think maybe you'll probably do all right, wouldn't it? I mean,
yeah, but then I thought that about Days Gone because I quite like that and more than some people, and that didn't either. But but anyway, move on. But I do hope it does well because I think it's been unfairly treated.
It definitely had too much preconceptions around it before, like it came out, before it even had a chance to live, sort of thing. But we can move on to Chris White because you've been playing through a scary game. Really scary game, actually.
Really scary game.
Now, Dead Space is back. Has there been a lot of marketing for it? I mean, that's not that we're going to talk about the game, but I'm just intrigued because, like, this happened before.
From where I look for news or go online or whatever, I've seen on basically Twitter.
Okay,
I've seen a lot on there, but not on anywhere else.
Well, let's talk about the actual game. Because it's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I shared my review, and I just thinking about it, and I just thought it's basically a new benchmark in how you remake a game, because it has a lot of the original you can see in it, obviously, but they've brought it to the modern audiences by adding features that make sense or tweaking things that were wrong about the original. And like, it wasn't a bad game, obviously. It was incredible. We all remember it. But, well, I say we all remember it. I don't remember it. There was a lot of this story. I was like, oh, fuck. Like the ending, I ain't got a clue. I couldn't remember any of that. But just the game itself is absolutely fantastic. Like you said early on about how it, only after a few hours, the Callisto Protocol. Yeah. The errors, the many errors that Callisto Protocol had. Yeah. Highlighted even more by playing Dead Space, and I like the Callisto Protocol, but this is just something else.
It's really weird though, because the people who made the Callisto Protocol are some of the people who made the original Dead Space.
Yeah, Schofield, isn't it?
Yeah. And I find that really strange because, I wonder, I'd have to load up the original Dead Space, but the audio logs and stuff, the fact you can just listen to them while you're wandering around the world, whereas the Callisto Protocol makes you stand
when
still.
Saving your game.
Yeah,
you can listen to them when opening a workbench.
Now, the thing is that something they've changed? Because
it must be.
The weird thing about this game is, right, and this actually caught you by surprise, Mick, didn't it? It's been sort of really touted as we have remade it. It was true to the original, and it is, by the way. But they've actually tweaked it. Like in the live chat of the video version of this podcast, Kieran has just said, I saw someone say it's on the level of Resident Evil 2, although perhaps a bit less striking because Dead Space wasn't quite as old as that. And by that, I think the person's saying it's not the same. It is the same, but they've tweaked it where you'd want it tweaked. Like
sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, now, when I say it's a better remake than Resident Evil 2, I'm not saying it's a better game per se.
No, just a better.
Saying
fair.
The way they've remade it is excellent.
I think I'd agree.
The finest detail, like everything about it. That it was always smart with the way you can kind of take out enemies, but they've added this dynamic encounter thing where no two areas are ever the same, and it like you notice that more when you die and then go back. So say you've just died in this area where there's been a swarm of these enemies. You die, go back to your save point, and then you come back and they're not there anymore, and you're like, that's weird. Like you're expecting them all just to burst out again, but they don't. And then you get to another area shortly after where you've just been, and then maybe more of them. And like even when you go to save your game, like there's a common conception where
it's kind of like Alien Isolation, isn't it?
Yeah. Everyone expects you to have a safe.
The save room music will play, and
just go and save. Nothing's going to interrupt you. And I remember the first time it did it, I was going to shit myself.
Yeah.
Because I was saving my game, and then this fucking huge thing with massive arms just came and just shredded me. And you can't breathe. There's not even in like rooms where there's a load of like chests and stuff to get more ammo. Normally in a game, their areas are like free from anything. So every now and again, some fucker will jump through the vents, and and that's what a survival horror game is. You want to be on the edge of your seat. You don't want to expect or predict what's going to happen. And there's not one point where I knew what was going to attack me, and you never.
That's why I fell out with
for it.
That's why I fell out with the Resi 2 remake in a way, because once you get past the point where you realise that Mr. X can't go in certain rooms, and you can, it becomes a lot less terrifying because he just turns up and you go, I've just got to get back there and say. Definitely. And it does. I think I can't remember who it was, but there was a YouTube video I saw. Might have been someone like Yahtzee or someone who said it, and he said it's less that became less like a horror game and more like a mailman negotiating around an angry dog.
Yeah.
Because all you had to do really when he popped up was get in the safe room.
See, I would argue that this for Dead Space 2, I'm not sure in terms of history what people regard as. I know everyone hated on Dead Space 3, so let's just forget about that for now. But Dead Space 2, I think, was regarded as kind of the pinnacle because it was the best mixture of the horror and the action in one.
Yeah.
Now, Dead Space 2, I remember as being one of the very few games that took me probably 3 times longer to complete because I could physically not play it in long chapters because the tension was too unbearable. Like I was physically like, I need a break. So the biggest credit I can pay to what I've played of Dead Space remake is that it actually is that original game channeling that intensity from Dead Space 2. I didn't play with headphones because I was capturing for our video review, but I did pick up on some of the. Now I don't know if it would mean anything to someone playing through for the first time. But Chris, did you notice some of the whispering that goes on in the quiet? Right, okay, so you did. Now I know why that is because I've played through the series. Now I'm absolutely sure that wasn't there in the original. No, it might have been. It might have been. But even without headphones, and I was like, I'm really glad I'm not wearing headphones for capture. I'm really glad because I think I would be able to play even shorter periods of time if it were,
I play a lot of horror games. I love a good horror game, and there's only 3 games which I really have struggled to play, and one of them was Alien Isolation. I've still not finished it. Oh. Second one was Outlast 2 because I had to review it.
Okay, yeah, I had to stop.
Dead Space, this. It's not so much. It's not. It is scary.
No, it's the tense.
But it's the yeah, and it's the anxiety it provides because obviously every game gets harder as you go along. But like the volume of some of the like when you hear that computer voice say hazardous anomaly detected, and then all the doors shut down and everything goes red, the lights go red, you're like, fuck, something bad's going to happen. And like those moments are like that you're just having to fight, keep off all these necromorphs from killing you. And then it's the moments where you're just out and about and all of a sudden you hear something and it'll either something will appear or it won't. But because of this encounters thing, you just never know whether that noise will follow through and you'll actually see one.
Sorry, I was just laughing because on the video version of this pod, I was in this bit of capture. I was just smacking around a necromorph who I'd thrown a spear through, and then just at this time I was mucking around, another one appeared right next to me. And at the moment, I'm laughing at it now, but I shat myself. Like, it was terrifying in the moment. And it's like games don't do that because it's like no, the room's clear. It's like in this game, like you said, you are never safe, and that is I can't believe I'm laughing now. I literally shit myself when it happened.
The choice of weapons as well. I think they're the same as the original.
I think they've changed some of it.
Overall.
I think they've changed some of it. They've changed the upgrade stuff as well.
Yeah, they've changed the alt fires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The actual weapons themselves. Like I was using, because obviously different and I know a lot of games say, oh, you can use different weapons for different enemies and stuff.
You need to.
You absolutely have to, because there's there's a lot of them, a lot of like the lanky ones with this like big old spikes for arms. You can just fire the ripper at their legs, chop them in half, and then they'll crawl on the floor, and then you can just torch them with a flamer. But then there are certain like modified versions of them which have like armor on, so you can't fight your blade thing. Ripper won't shred through them, so you have to use something like your contact gun to just fire that contact beam. To fire that laser straight at the chest to like. And there's so much, and then you've got all the bloody like stasis,
which again, sorry, but like when I was playing through it again, I think I'd forgotten quite a lot of it. I mean, I'm shit with my memory anyway, but like having played the Callisto Protocol so recently, it's like I don't want to dismiss that game because I think that game's fine, but like even playing it when I played it, I was like, there's a lot of Dead Space in it. But playing Dead Space again, I'm now looking back on that going, there's too much Dead Space in that game. Like I know, look, they made it, so I guess they're allowed to. But it's just the intensity of this game is crazy. Like I captured so much footage, right, and there was so much I couldn't use because there were so many times. It's difficult to describe on a podcast, but like where I would be walking forward and something would make me jump, and I would physically on the camera be like that, forward and back quickly, and it would look so terrible because I was swinging the camera around, and it's like. I played this game before, not this game, but like, you know what I mean.
I just want to touch on the visuals as well. Like, obviously they're great. Of course they're great, but there's certain things they've done differently to the original, which you have to really commend them for in today's day and age. It's the fact that they all look normal.
Yeah, like Isaac especially is like. What?
Isaac looks like some general guy who's manager of Screwfix. Do you know what I mean?
He's not even good looking, like really.
No, and his wife, like, is just a normal woman. She's not like some like model off Pornhub or something. She's just a normal human being, and that's what she is. And I just find that really good. And like, because like with Callisto Protocol, you've got, I mean, Josh Duhamel he's a good actor, obviously, and he was good in that. But he's like, he's a pretty sexy man, isn't he? Like. Yeah. Whereas it's just good to have just normal people. I feel better about myself. I could be a video game character.
I do wonder if people will. I mean, the game is not out at this moment. I wonder if people will be furious about the fact he's voiced from the very start. But I think the fact they got the original voice actor from the other games is like.
Yeah, Gunnar Wright. I think he's great.
You don't play through it going, oh, he shouldn't speak then. It's kind of the opposite. No. You're like, actually, this makes a lot more sense for him not to be completely mute.
It's not like constant. It's not like constant dialogue.
No,
it's not shoving it in your face.
No.
And I'd forgotten about the story completely. I remember about the marker.
Yep.
And the unitology religion kind of thing. But like all the twists and the turns and the deaths, I'm like, completely new to me. Maybe it's because it was so terrifying that you kind of shut it out your memory.
Yeah, maybe.
But no,
this is one of those games that I'll end up watching people play because there's no way I get through this. I couldn't get through Alien Isolation particularly far, and I can't. I never played the original Dead Space because of this reason. Because I tried it, and I think I played. I don't even know if I made an hour before I was like, no, this isn't for me. I can't do. I can't even do the comedy horror game.
This is a fast starting game as well.
The Five Nights at Freddy's things. I can't do anything where there's a jump scare or I can't handle the tension. But I always want to. I always feel like Dead Space is one of those series that's always given me the real FOMO because everyone talks so highly of it, and I always because I think if it was a film, I'd watch it. It wouldn't bother me. But playing it for me, the tension is too much for me, and I always really want to play these games.
The only times I didn't fall for it a little bit is like, you know, when you get the second main gun, there's a woman lying on the floor and she's got the gun and she's like, "Oh, I tried to save him," and then she dies, and then you just get a gun like the is it a rail gun or pulse gun? I can't remember. You know, whatever it is, because basically the one thing I remembered in going into this was stamp everything to death because it could turn or come alive, and so I kind of ruined that moment because she dropped her gun, died, and I instantly just like did the stomp button and her head exploded.
That's the thing though with this game. You're frantically just twatting the stomp button.
Oh Jesus! I'm like, you're not turning.
When you've killed anyone, you just fucking like, please.
But like, this is the thing. I hadn't killed her. She's like this character that's like died trying to save everyone, and it's supposed to be. I don't think it's supposed to be like a tremendously emotional moment. But like the second her eyes shut, I was like, stamp head, and your head popped off because like you're not turning into one of them fucking scissor wielding. But yeah, no, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, every sound design, the sound design as well. Just from like the obviously when you're walking around the Ishimura, oh shit, and you can hear things that you're not sure if it's like you were talking about the whispers. You can hear noises, you can hear the environment just being alive. It's the stuff when you enter like when there's no oxygen in the room and you've got your oxygen pack.
Reminds me of Mass Effect 2 at the start.
Yeah, it's all muffled and like you can hear sounds, but it's like you're underwater. It's just so well done. Like the littlest detail, they've really kind of nailed on everything visually, audio. Like this, I'm not going to say the story is incredible or all the voice acting is amazing because it is a bit ham-fisted sometimes and it's a bit predictable, but it doesn't matter. Like it's a good, solid kind of blockbuster horror. And I'm not playing it necessarily for the story itself. I just think I just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, from one horror game, I mean, there's no other way to get to this next game without emotional whiplash. So let's just talk about... So as we record this, Microsoft did their little showcase, their developer direct, and we can talk about that, of course, but like the big thing to come out of it was that Bethesda's Tango Gameworks studio announced Hi-Fi Rush and released Hi-Fi Rush. Now, it's not unknown or unheard of for the shadow drops, but they've been less.
I feel it is.
It is for this. Is what I was going to say. It is for this kind of thing. Like this is not a quick little game, by the way.
No, and how many Xbox presentations, whether it be E3 or anything, where they've just gone, come in 2023, come in 2024, come in here, and you're like, and then next year it's like, oh, come in fall 2023. Never any release dates, never any surprises. And you just become fatigued by Xbox. And I really was. And even at the start of this, when we were messaging the group, and I was like, I'm bored. And then Megami-san comes on, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it looked...
What a handsome man, by the way.
He's very handsome, isn't he?
I keep forgetting he's not old, if that makes sense. I always think he must be getting on. But what a handsome motherfucker. Like, I've got to say...
Yeah,
it warrants credit to him. Like that, everything about that, the beard, the sculpt, it's super. Anyway, Hi-Fi Rush though. Even when they sit at the end, they were like, "Oh, and they've got some good news. You can play it right now." And I was thinking, "Oh, cool, a demo, a demo." And then they go, "No, the full game, and it's in Game Pass, and it's a new gen exclusive,
and it's not shit.
It's fucking brilliant
at all. It's not even." Like it's just fun, man.
It's fucking great.
We just
The
need
visuals of it are unreal.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Where do you want to start, man? Because I've not played tons. I would say the second boss, shall we say? I've just defeated them, but there's enough there to make me want to. Well, we'll be continuing because I'm reviewing it. But like, even if I wasn't, I'd be on this because it's just what I want.
Right.
Like,
and that's where I am.
Because the way they were talking, because there's some rhythm games.
Yes.
Where you play and you're like, they're not as reactive or they're not as in sync as you want them to be. And like, I was worried because they have to be on the beat. They have to be spot on or else they just won't work. And the way everything is on the beat, like the cutscenes, the certain things in the cutscenes that are on the beat, your running, your movement is on the beat. Like every step is on the beat. every attack, everything in the environment is kind of pulsing to the beat. So they're basically like, you ain't got an excuse for being shit at this rhythm game. But then you play it and it's just amazing. Like, it's just so much fun. Like the way you dodge, you attack to the beat, you get all your different specials, and then it starts introducing other characters. It builds gradually, never throwing too much at you. It's very handholdy in a good way, not in a negative way. Like, it really wants you to just have fun. It just wants you to have fun, and like we could do with that because
nice and soundtrack as well.
Yeah. Oh, for God's sake!
When they really revealed it, and I saw Zwan in there, I'm like, sorry.
I'd love that to be there. Like Megami's like, yeah, I love a bit of
well, it has to be, right? Because Zwan haven't been a thing for bloody hell, 10 years. At least 10 years. Yeah. Like it was. So for those who don't know, Zwan is like a Smashing Pumpkins adjacent, like Billy Corgan. When he wasn't doing the Pumpkins, he formed Zwan, and I think it had Chamberlain on drum. I can't remember. It's been such a long time ago. It was a great album, and then they just all fell out like they kind of anyone seems to whenever they were with Billy Corgan. Seeing Zwan, there was like, that's so weird. No one is going to.
Clearly a taste thing. Like there's clearly someone.
It has to be, man. It has to be someone who's a fan, because that is.
And like the opening up with the Black Keys as well. It's like, what are you playing at? It's just, yeah. I mean, it's a bit like, I don't want to say cheesy, but it's a bit like, like when games are like, oh, gnarly and all that, and I'm too old for it. But like, it's a lot of fun. Like it's not the end of the world.
Forspoken did wrong. Yeah.
No, it's like, for starters, this has got one of the most amazing looks. Like, if you're not instantly enraptured by what you're looking at, I don't know what's wrong with you, because it is unreal looking, and so I don't know why I thought this, but I kind of figured in my head like it'd be like unfinished or a bit unpolished, and like it's the complete opposite of that. It is so polished, like when it will go in and out of cutscenes or all of that, and it's so well done. It is so well done. There's no sort of, you can't see the joins of the seams. It's so professionally done, and the combat is done in a way that you can play it if you're shit at rhythm games, because really all the rhythm games, it's going to just, you enhance your attacks by being on the beat, as it were, rather than just like you have to be on the beat. It's quite smart because it does that thing of, when you're playing a game and you're like, this is cool, but it needs something more. And just as you're feeling that, a good game, bang, delivers that, all right? And this does that over and over again. Like, say, what was I on level? I think chapter 3 or 4, they're called songs, but track 3 or 4, where you unlock. I don't know if it's a spoiler. I mean, you unlock. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's just you unlock a parry, essentially, right? And the parry is a thing we talked about recently with like Sekiro. Okay, now in this, when you get the parry, it tutorializes it, and it introduces enemies that shoot lasers at you. But it's more of a rhythm game than the standard combat you've been playing. So it will come up and there's like a lightning bolt for each attack it's going to do. So it could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 2, whatever. But rather than you having to parry it visually because there's a flash, that's what I struggle with. Rhythmically, I'm fine, but visually I struggle with the cues. Now, because this is so, everything is musical and rhythmic, in this, the lasers don't go pew pew pew. They will be in time, so that you basically have to match what they do. So it might be bang, 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 and they will be the 5 parries. And it's so clever. And I was like, I wasn't getting it, and then I sort of, hang on, come on, yeah. Oh right, the musical side of it, and I got it, and it's like, oh god, I'm parrying, and it's just so, I'm really, really surprised by it. Like, just to shadow drop this and it be this good. And look this good and sound this good and like it, do you know what it reminds me a little bit of? It's like a combination of Sunset Overdrive and Jet Set Radio.
Yeah, I get that.
But like not really. Also, like it isn't that it isn't really Jet Set Radio at all, because like there's sort of rail grinding, but it's more like slingshot grinding. And it's Sunset Overdrive more because of how it looks than, because it's a melee game, not a shooter. Like, it just, there's a lot going on, and like they even made jokes about how they're like, the horror game guys, and this is not that game, and it's like, it isn't. It isn't.
Oh my
that game.
God! Yeah, everywhere on the presentation, in the press release, on this website. The guy from Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. I know, right? It's like,
I did like in the trailer though.
Guy.
No, but I did like in the trailer where it goes from the Evil Within and then afterwards from the Evil Within 2 brackets. Obviously, I did like that. That was
but it is from him, but it's from this whole team that have managed to put together something so good without really anybody. Well, I didn't know about it. I know there might have been leaks or whatever, but it was a complete surprise. And I remember going like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." And then when they're like, "It's out now," bravo, brilliant Xbox.
I think the only leak was the game name. I don't think anybody knew anything about
this. Which is shit.
Oh, it's a dreadful name. Yeah, it's a dreadful name.
I tell you what another game it reminds me of: Gravity Rush.
Yeah,
not just because it's got Rush in its heart, but the way she moves in that.
Yeah,
very similar feel to it. Like,
yeah, no, that's fair.
And it's also very simplified in its like. It's not a skill tree, but you can like unlock different skills themselves, like different moves, I guess.
I mean, gameplay-wise, it's more Ratchet and Clank without the shooting than anything else, I would say, isn't it?
Yeah,
sort of, maybe. Yeah. It's just really good fun.
Just nice and easy, straightforward. It's not a massive open world. It's pretty linear, but there's enough there. And like the environmental, like not puzzles, but traversal is very varied
and satisfying.
And like you were on about adding things to it. I was at a point where I'm like, okay, so is the only change is going to be the skills that I buy? And then they introduced something with the LB button, which I won't ruin just in case. I was like, oh, cool, brilliant. So that's something else, and I'm looking forward to see what else they do with it. But just to come out of nowhere,
yeah.
It's
bad. I mean, I want to playing it now. It's really captured me. Like I played a lot of it today. But that's not the only game that's coming to Xbox. It's quite an Xboxy. Well, we started PlayStation, we're ending Xbox, I suppose, because Lyle, you've been playing a game I'm going to let you introduce because I don't know.
Oh, right. That's how it is it?
Well, I don't.
You don't want to say the name.
I'll try. I'm guessing it's Inkulinati.
Inkulinati, yes. I watched a YouTube video of the developers talking about it before the podcast to make sure I had it right. But yeah, Inkulinati is it's basically sort of like a side-on tactics game. So it's like a 2D flat environment where you have two armies of like little hand-drawn animal pictures, and it's supposed to take place on the edge of a book. And you're sort of controlling. I mean, you're controlling all these characters in your normal tactics way, where you take turns and move them around, and they'll have different special abilities and ranges and all that stuff. But you're also sort of controlling the person drawing them, and you have like abilities like to prod one of the enemies with your finger to deal damage to them, or to like slide them around, and it's really clever. It's a really interesting take on the tactics game, because like you'd think like sort of having like a 2D line almost where the battlefield is taking place might make it sort of too simple, like whereas normally, you'd have your full grid to go about on. But because of it being on this flat surface, it means that there's like a big emphasis on pushing. So your main character can sort of, you're like commander, I guess. I think they're called a mini Inkulinati, can sort of slide things around with one of their abilities. So like if there's an enemy that's on one side of the map, and then before the edge of the map, there's like maybe a barrel and another enemy. If you slide them to the right, there's no other empty space for them to go. So they'll just go straight off the edge of the map and they'll die. So it's a really weird way that you have to think about the tactic, because you can just sort of, whittle the health down with a bunny with a bow shooting them, or, going up to them with a dog with a spear, or you can sort of use this sort of whole positional gameplay to make it work. It almost reminded me of something like, what was it called? Into the Breach, where you're sort of thinking more about the positions than sort of the attacks you use, but in a completely different way. Alongside this as well, it's a roguelike. So you sort of go on these runs where you'll have that sort of Slay the Spire branching path where you pick what battles you want to do and what sort of shops you want to go to or events you want to trigger. And as you're doing this and sort of upgrading your army, you there's all sorts of things that carry across from each battle. So you can have one fight where you maybe use your dog archer a lot. I used my dog archer a lot because they're quite powerful.
Is that, that Wolfgang?
It should be. I mean, they all have
name,
different
and
names.
I was laughing at. I didn't know if you got to name them or whether it was actually called Wolfgang.
Oh no, they just automatically come with good names.
They do. Fair play.
Very odd.
Yeah. So yeah, you're in this battle where you think that your dog archer will be really useful. So you sort of summon like 3 of them when you've got enough ink to do so. But in doing that, your character gets bored drawing them. So every time after that battle they draw them, it uses up more ink. So it sort of means that as you go through the game, you have to be like, well, in this fight, I could use these units, but then I'll probably want to not use them for a while because I'll be bored and it'll cost more to use them later on. And it's a really fine balancing act. And it's really clever. It's awesome how it all works, but it definitely, especially if you're playing on like normal, which might as well be fucking called hard in this game. You'll get like slightly far into the run and it gets overwhelming fast. Like there's a lot of mechanics going on at once. Like I entered one new level where there were these bell towers where if you rung them and your characters were near them, they would wake up and get an extra turn. But that also happened with the enemies. And then at the same time, there was a new type of like explosive jar that did a larger explosion than usual. And I was facing explosive enemies and there was a new type of trap. And I was just like, I was ridiculously overwhelmed. Like it kind of feels like they could have stretched out the new things to make each run last maybe twice as long, and you'd maybe get a little bit more accustomed to it because it is a lot. But when you do get used to it, it's really, really good. And there's loads of variety. There's loads of different sort of like builds you can try and work out. Like maybe you want to have a whole full team of like these explosive characters, and you can get these powers where you detonate them whenever you want, so they'll die but they'll deal loads of damage to everyone near them. So it's like it's sort of sacrificing them to make that work, or maybe you want to focus on these characters that are immune to these certain traps because you know that later on in the game there's fucking loads of them. And it's just such a good tactics game. It works really well, and it doesn't feel really like because it's early access game preview that it's releasing as on the 31st, I think.
End of the month, Game Pass. Well, game preview via Game Pass.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like it at all. Like it feels pretty much like a fully fleshed out, like, balanced game from what I've played. Like it could maybe have a little bit better onboarding because, like I say, it's really hard. But I don't really know why it's in game preview otherwise, really.
Like the menus and stuff when you start it are a bit I don't know,
placeholder.
Yeah, a little bit. And I think the tutorial will be tweaked because it sort of does this weird thing where it tries to tell you the same thing twice for everything, and one of them is just a lot more easy to understand than the other, but the other one's kind of more in-world and university character type thing.
Yeah.
So it does. I think it actually overcomplicates itself by doing that. But like, it is really an interesting game, and it's really odd because are Microsoft just into sort of medieval hand-drawn art at the moment with this and Pentiment. Like, there's no way you. Like, Pentiment's a weird game with a weird name. Inkulinati is a weird game with a weird name. They're not at all similar in terms of the actual games. There's no similarity whatsoever between them. It's weird that it's early access, actually. I'm not sure. I guess perhaps they'll add more story to it, or perhaps it doesn't have an ending. Perhaps it's one of those where because it's a roguelike, it hasn't yet got its ending. I don't know. It's
is it a recommend? Is it one that you'd say yeah?
Oh shit, yeah, like definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Game Pass for like. Why wouldn't you have a go?
Well,
on
I know, but I don't want to just be like just play because it's free. I mean, is it like worth playing as well?
I think it. I mean, Lyle, your sort of early access review was like very, very positive, and I don't see. Yeah, like not much I can really add. It's just you've described it succinctly, and I agree. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like a really nice game. It's funny. It's it's an easy recommend for, especially with Game Pass in your mind, you know.
It is, and it's got enough depth that it can keep you, like, it'll definitely keep you interested. Like, if you want to really get stuck into it and, like, you know, up the difficulty to medium, like a madman, then, you know, that's an option. You can do that. Yeah, really, really great game. Not really sure how it's going to evolve from here, because it does feel so good right now. But, you know, I'll stick along for the ride, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, before we're not doing listener correspondence this week, but I did want to. I think it's going to be a difficult game to talk too much about, but I did want to hear about Season of Letters to the Future, which your review went up today as well, and 9 out of 10, because it's one of those where I've seen, you know, I've covered it like with news posts and stuff, and I didn't really quite understand what it was. So perhaps you can enlighten me.
Yeah, I can certainly try, but I'm not promising anything. Season is a game where you play as someone who has lived their whole life in sort of like an isolated little mountain village and is going out into the world to record basically the current state of it before a big change happens. I'm keeping things sort of intentionally vague, but also it's quite confusing. So it's better this way. And then so this situation means that you're going through these environments and you're basically just recording anything that's interesting. Like everywhere you go, it's really dense with like interesting like posters or ruined cars or things that have, you know, from the world. And because you've lived your whole life in this tiny village, you have, like, you know, you don't really have much of a measure of what these things are, or certainly no first-hand experience with them. So it's your character sort of like you go around, you cycle around on a little pedal bike and take photos of anything interesting and record audio of anything that sounds interesting, like frogs croaking in a nice little stream, or like music playing on a radio. And then your character has a little sort of something to say about it. And eventually, once you've collected enough of these sort of photos or sounds that are in an area, you make a scrapbook page out of them. So you take all your little Polaroid photos and a few little hand drawings and some quotes of the things that she said about these objects, and you make a lovely little page about them. And it's really compelling and really it was never one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'll just slap some things down. It doesn't matter. It just feels like you're building this book of like what this magical weird world is like. And it really is a magical weird world, because there's one of the first things you do is create a pendant to protect yourself with your mum, and you do that by her basically destroying her own memories about some items from your childhood. And it's utterly baffling and really weird, but like it hits all the emotional beats perfectly. Like you'll meet some characters on your adventure who are like most of it takes place in this valley that's essentially going to be wiped away by a flood because of a dam that's broken. And you meet all these people who like are sort of like on the cusp of evacuating, and there's some like really interesting stories about how they're coping with it. Again, it is hard to talk about because I don't want to spoil any of these like emotional moments that were like genuine tearjerkers for me. But like it's a very confusing game. It's a very relaxing game, and sometimes it makes you cry. And that's Season.
Well, you can actually go and read the full review on GodIsAGeek.com, obviously. Before we do close out, I just wanted to get everyone's very brief impressions. We don't do short podcasts anymore, but this will be a short one without Chris Hyde here for his listener correspondence. You know, we couldn't do him dirty and do it again without him. So I just wanted to. We've always done this for a bit of fun in the past, so I wanted people to give their out of 10 score for Microsoft Showcase. That they didn't. None of them knew that this was coming. I will say, like, for me, even racing games take a lot for me nowadays to go, wow, visually, because like it's the thing everyone puts out to show off their new console. Look at how amazing our racing game looks. But I will say that I saw that, and they once again reiterated 4K 60 for that game, ray tracing and all that, and I'm like, okay, you're still saying that. Okay, let's see it. I thought that game looked phenomenal. I don't know what they're doing in terms of what's going to make it a more interesting game as a Forza Motorsport, but I thought that showed well. The Elder Scrolls is just something I can't get into. I've tried so many times to get into that game and play it, and I can't do it. I hate myself for it, but whatever. We talked about Hi-Fi Rush. What else was there? Redfall.
Minecraft Legends.
Minecraft Legends, I think, looks great, just for the record. I don't think there's much point dwelling on it, but I think that looks great and looks really interesting. But Redfall looks the business for me. Like, it looks the business, and it's it's coming in May. So I would actually give what I also thought the presentation of it was really well done. I thought like the graphics that they did and all the presentation of it was no fuss. There was no presenter. There was no messing around. Like, it would be like a big old 8 out of 10 for me, because now I know what I'm going to be playing on Xbox. All of those games, and then there's like Wo Long in Game Pass and Atomic Heart in Game Pass, and like for nothing else, Hi-Fi Rush has blown me away so far. Like, if it can stick the landing on that, it's going to be potentially in the lists come the end of the year. Like, it's really good, especially for Nice's surprise. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So you guys can now give it a rating, and any thoughts you want to give it. Now I've filled enough air for you to have a think. Take it away, anyone go for it.
I think for me, look, I don't. I always sound like I hate on Xbox. Like, whenever we discuss Xbox, I always sound like I'm anti-Xbox in some way, and I'm not. But I don't use, I have Game Pass, but I play a lot of games anyway. Like, we either review them, or so Game Pass ends up not being something that I dip into, because usually I'll probably end up reviewing something on a different platform or whatever. So, like, I'm not a Forza fan, but I like Forza. I think everybody can see that Forza is a good thing. It's a good product, but I'm not a racing game fan. Again, Elder Scrolls, Elder Scrolls should be me. I should be all over Elder Scrolls Online. And I love Skyrim. I love Oblivion.
I think you just missed the boat. I think you just missed the boat. It's one that you needed to be there for, and I think it's just too much now.
I did jump into ESO right at the beginning, and it was boring. And then I left it for years and came back, and it was indecipherable. And now there's just, like you say, it's just too much of it. And I don't get excited about new expansions for that anymore.
Okay.
The best thing about the showcase for me was Hi-Fi Rush, because
you need to play that, by the way. You will love that.
It yet. But for me, that was Xbox. I mean, I assumed...
Redfall? You're not all over Redfall? You must be all over Redfall.
I haven't.
Why is everyone... Redfall is the next Forspoken. Everyone's down on that game. That game is going to be amazing.
Well, I haven't got there yet. I was just saying that, like, Hi-Fi Rush was a big deal for me, because I assumed that it was going to be shit. I thought, it's a free game. They're just dropping it on us. It's going to be something like, like sometimes when they do an Xbox Gold game and you go, I've never heard of that. So, and then it turns out that it's really good. And so, like, that I think they did well. I think Xbox, because as well, it's kind of ironic that people go, I hope they show some games this time. And Xbox went, actually, fucking have one. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not just going to show them. Here's a game. But yeah, I think the big thing in terms of what's coming, of what I saw was Redfall. I mean, it is, because that is a me game. Good. That is something that I'm excited to play. I don't think that people are being very fair with it. They haven't really been since it was announced. It's been one of those games where people have gone, what, vampires? Oh, what, it's 2023. And I think, pull the stick out your ass and wait and play the game. And I do think that, like you said, it's going to be another one that is like, this is the game. Redfall's going to be the game that the PlayStation fans turn on because the Xbox fans turned on Forspoken. Yeah. That's what's going to happen. It's going to get compared, even though they couldn't be different. They couldn't be more different. It's going to be compared every turn. In Metacritic scores, in everything.
I will just say, I'm not sure that's the best release date, because that's quite close to Tears of the Kingdom. And I think we've seen how that goes for games like new franchises. But what I mean is, like, Horizon Zero Dawn did this, and that game's amazing. And this game, I think, will be amazing. But we've seen how this goes Give us your score anyway, Mick.
At least people don't have to pay for it, though. That is the important part of that.
Game Pass is free after all. Yeah.
I
Free,
think
100%.
For Hi-Fi Rush and Redfall alone, Minecraft I couldn't give two shits about, but for Redfall and well, I don't like Minecraft. I don't.
No one's ever said that.
I can't stand Minecraft. But for Hi-Fi Rush and Redfall, it's 7 out of 10. It was a decent, and it was a good show. I did enjoy it. So
less than 7. An hour in and out. That was the thing I was most happy about.
Yeah.
I am so tired of. Although I will say that afterwards they put out like a 1:30 long video or something that was like, "Here's all the things," and it's like, I think you either do that as your presentation or you don't do that yourself.
I don't need a recap of
because like don't diminish the information. You know what I mean? Like I think these things are often too long and self-indulgent, but that's coming from someone who's just done an hour and a bit podcast of us talking, so maybe I'll shut up. Lyle, what's your score for the Xbox Developer Direct?
I'm going right in between the both of you. I'm going for 7.5 out of 10.
Okay.
The things that drop it down for me are, I don't care about Forza. It's like, I like Forza Horizon, and I'm never going to be bothered about Forza serious racing time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not what I'm into. Same for Elder Scrolls. Probably same for Minecraft, but we'll sort of see. We'll have a look. We'll have a little bit of a try, maybe.
Okay.
But Hi-Fi Rush looks like everything I like. It's very, very colourful, and that's pretty much all it needs to be in it. And rhythm game, I love that sort of stuff too.
I'd be really surprised if there's a single person on our team that doesn't really like Hi-Fi Rush. Really surprised.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right from what I've heard about it, definitely. And I think Redfall, and I've been secretly championing Redfall for a while, as you have been, Adam. And I think Redfall's going to be fucking great. I think everything about that game looks great. And I think one of the things that I struggle with most with Arcane's games, it is Arcane, right? Is that like they require quite a lot of stealth and you die quickly, and that doesn't seem to be what this sort of game's about. And I'm all in for that. And I like vampires. We don't really get a lot of vampires. They people sort of think they're overdone when really they're not.
They're really not overdone in games anymore. I mean, think about how much people want Soul Reaver and Legacy of Kain back.
Totally.
Yeah.
When's the last time anyone talked about Castlevania? Really, all the things that involve vampires.
I mean,
don't really
V Rising was the biggest one, I suppose, and
oh yeah, true.
Parade.
Yeah. So 7.5 from Lyle, 7 from Mick, 8 from me. Chris White, close us out, mate. Close us out.
4. I was going to say 4.
Minecraft Legends. I don't like saying this, but I don't give a shit about it. I
think we just worked out who's reviewing it then.
No, look, it probably will be great, but I don't really want to play PvP. I know it's like there's a story as well, but that's not a game I'd choose to play online. It's a great concept, but no, I'm all right. Forza, yeah, again, I know I review all the racing games, but there's a very particular type of racing game that I'll actually stay and play. Forza Horizon was obviously one. Even Gran Turismo I didn't stay with, really, but it was great. But I'll play motorsport and I'll probably love it, but I won't stick with it. So
just worked out who's reviewing that one then.
Again, I was like, yeah, this is good. But then there was no release.
Xbox man this year.
Apparently I am, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about Hi-Fi Rush. Brilliant. Redfall also looks wicked. One thing I want from Redfall is to be like I don't want World War Z. I don't want like waves.
No, I don't. I
want
think
it to be strategic. I want to go into a house and not know how many are going to be, whether it's just a few or I like the surprise of it, and I want to.
You want detective stuff. You want to be able to go into a house where there's a couple of vampires and be a detective, and then come to a boss fight or something.
Yeah,
but not just like COD waves of shooters.
And maybe there's like
you just want some pacing, don't you? You just want there to be like.
I don't just want it to be like Left 4 Dead, which is great, but I want a game that's a bit different. And from what we saw, like that looks quite plausible.
Yeah.
And Arcane, we all know they're a phenomenal developer, and that the last game definitely was.
I reckon their hit rate must be pretty high, actually, thinking about it.
They don't. I can't think of a bad arcade.
Well, I mean,
game.
what?
Not
Dishonored,
for me
Dishonored 2,
personally.
Dishonored, Outsider, Deathloop, and now this. So, like, this would be their fifth. I mean, what was that? What was that standalone one called? Something of the Outsider. I'm sure it was.
Yeah,
It
they
was
did
something
it.
of the Outsider.
But it
you're
was a
right.
standalone, but not. I mean, if you want to call it their third game or whatever, but fine.
It was Death of the Outsider. It was Death of the Outsider because you had to kill him. That was the game.
Fair enough. But like, their hit rate must be pretty high. So
yeah.
I think they're a great studio as well. I think they have a look. I mean, even Deathloop had a look that looked like sort of the Dishonored games.
Yeah.
Just if they like people always you put trust in certain developers, don't you?
This is why I was arguing for Redfall the other week when people were like, "Oh, that won't be better than this." I was like, "They've the studio that have my trust at the moment."
Yeah. They haven't had a miss for me yet. Like I always talk about Platinum Games having a hit and miss, checkered pass. But for me, Arcane they're 1-to-1 so far with hits, and I don't think Redfall's going to disappoint.
What's your score, Chris? What's your score?
Elder Scrolls. Hang on.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah,
not done yet.
I'll be playing it.
Yeah, no, I forgot you played that. Yeah,
I haven't played it for probably a good year, but like through lockdown, I must have put in a good 100. Like I was in it. But you don't just you can't. I never could just go in and just play it. You have to find like some starting point to get into it because it is so vast now. But you focus on one of the chapters and play through that, go on to another chapter, and then you start to pick up the wider world and what you can actually do. So the footage that was showed off at the Developer Direct looked good, but then there was like a later stream that Bethesda did, which detailed what this year's kind of story is going to be, and that looked cool because you're going back to Morrowind. So I'll be playing it. I'm looking forward to that, and then the whole Necrom event. But in I'd give it a 7.
Okay. Definitely sounds like I'm next Mr. Xbox this year. Well, that's pretty much the podcast for this week. We'll be back again next week. I think Chris will be back to do some listener correspondence. So send us your questions in the bottom of this. If you're watching it on YouTube, just go down the chat and leave questions, and we'll round them up for next week. Thank you to Mick, to Chris White, and to Lyle for being here this week. Hopefully Lyle won't be a floating head next week as well. We're working on that. We're working on that. But this has been episode 510. My name's been Adam Cook. Thank you for watching, and we will speak to you next week or whenever you choose to listen. More big games. Bye for now.
Bye.